Does it improve the sound? And is that improvement worth the cost? Welcome to Lancaster Hi-Fi. I'm Stephen Lancaster. Today I want to follow up on a video that I made about a thing that I can't unhear. And that thing that I couldn't unhear was the Origin Live Strata platter mat. This is a 3-layer platter mat. Notice the bit sort of missing in the middle, sort of single rigid layer on the bottom, some probably softer material in between, and something relatively rubbery on the top. And these cost about $400, which, you know, is a good bit of change. And so if you're going to buy something like this, kind of better be worth that $400, right? Well, when I first heard the difference between this mat and the stock rubber mat on my Pioneer PL630, I was sold. I was like, yeah, it's totally that difference, night and day, totally worth the money as soon as I can afford to buy this. Now you must be thinking, well, I guess he decided it was worth it and he bought it. But no, this one I borrowed from my friend Chris, because I figured it would be nice to try it out on my system here where I plan to use it. And I've had conversations with Chris about this. He says, in my main system, it makes a big difference, totally worth the money. But in my office system, the difference is pretty subtle. And if it were just for that system, not worth $400. Now the question is it worth $400 in my system? So I tried it. I've actually been using it for a couple of weeks now. I did some initial back and forth between the original stock rubber mat and the Origin Live Strata mat. And the difference was pretty subtle. It makes a difference, at least in this room, mainly in the bass. And so a bass-heavy track will actually be louder on the stock rubber mat. There seems to be a resonance at certain bass frequencies that the rubber mat doesn't dampen or maybe even encourages. And it sounds sort of like a room resonance. And then you put on the Strata mat and that extra bit of bass boominess drops out. And you hear more of the rest of the music. Now, on certain tracks, it can actually make a noticeable difference in the apparent loudness. And in particular, when I tested it with War Pigs off of Black Sabbath's Paranoid album, and I looked back at the tracks in the video editor, and it's significantly louder, and you can hear the difference when you play the excerpts side by side. You can hear the difference in the loudness. But for most tracks, the difference is pretty subtle. And even when I was switching back and forth between the rubber mat and the Strata mat, playing that first side of Paranoid over and over again, and in particular playing War Pigs over and over again, I wasn't 100% sure of the difference. So we come back to the question of, you know, if you're going to spend money on a tweak or anything to improve the sound of your system, then it had better be worth it. You know, does it make an improvement? Can you hear the improvement? And is it worth the money? And I think in my case right now, I'm a bit tossed about it. You know, the difference is real, but it doesn't seem like it's really a big enough difference at this point anyway for me to want to spend $400 on it. You know, there are other things with my system that I think are more obvious targets of effort and money. So I will probably put off, at least for now, spending money on the Strata mat. In particular, when I use my moving coil cartridge on my Pioneer PL630 in this room, there's a bit of a hum. And I don't hear it when the music's playing in general, but it does kind of bug me when it should be silent. There is an audible hum. And that's not something that a platter mat can change. It's probably not even something that, you know, going from a solid state moving coil stage or a transimpedance head amp or even a step-up transformer, probably none of those are going to solve the problem. The one thing that I have heard that made the hum go silent is my friend Chris's Mola Mola Lupe phono stage. But, you know, that costs the better part of $10,000, and that's not in my budget anytime soon. So the tweak that I'm going to be chasing is probably implementing some kind of shielding, maybe even redoing the tone arm wiring in my turntable. But, you know, I'll start small. And, you know, maybe at some point I will decide that I've improved the other things that I can improve that are obvious, and that then maybe $400 might be well spent on this mat, because it does make a difference. Just not as big a difference in this room on this system as in Chris's system, which is like, oh, you know, knock me over with a feather, right? His system costs orders of magnitude more than mine. So, you know, it's not too surprising that his system would be able to resolve the difference that the Strata mat makes. And it does make a significant difference. It's just probably not worth $400 in my system right now, especially when there are other things that I can address. I'm thinking this song might be a good demo of the effects of this platter mat. So, I'm going to play the song first with the Strata mat. Okay, now for the stock rubber mat. I do want to go back to the Strata one more time, just you know, let's try one more thing though. I have this felt mat. Might as well see if we can hear the difference with this.
Too many thorns on my mind. It puts too many thorns on my mind. It puts too many thorns on my mind. It puts too many thorns on my mind. But I know this ain't even true. But I know this ain't even true. This ain't even true. But I know this ain't even true. Everybody clear the sprites. Everybody clear the sprites. Everybody clear the sprites. Everybody clear the sprites.
Okay, impressions. That bass part of the track is pretty steady in volume all the way through, but there's a lot of detail sort of riding along underneath, a lot of trebly detail, which gets louder and louder through the track. If you cranked up that bass a bit relative to the other stuff, the point at which those other little ticky stuff things come in, would come later in the track, in the song. Sounded good. The difference is pretty damn subtle. In one sense, it sounds a bit livelier with the rubber mat, because, the bass reverberates a little more, I think. And it is pretty subtle. That's not a $400 difference. That's not a, oh darn, I can't unhear that difference. I would need more resolving speakers, more resolving amplifiers, less hum. I do want to go back to the Strata one more time, but I've done this before, gone back and forth and back and forth, and I think I can pick out the difference, but it's just really subtle, and the difference is there. It just doesn't appear at this point to be worth the money it would cost. I think I'm getting more of the high end with the Strata mat, and I think that's not so much more high end as it is a bit less bass, particularly in a certain frequency range where there seems to be a bit of a resonance with the rubber mat. It's not a huge difference. Yeah, still not hearing a lot of difference there. Maybe a bit harder to pick that one out as to what difference it might have made. I'll be fine going back to the rubber mat once I give the Origin Live Strata mat back to Chris. It's fine. I'm not going to be disappointed. Maybe a smidge, but nah, this hum that maybe you can hear. Well, if you can't hear it now, here. That hum. The hiss, that's pretty normal with any phono preamp. The hum, that's due to the moving coil cartridge. But it's not changing when, here, I'll demonstrate. If we're picking up that noise from the motor, we would probably expect it to change when the platter's actually spinning, and we'd probably expect it to change as we move towards the center of the record. So let's see. So no change when the motor starts. And no change as we get closer to the center. So this turntable has a transformer back here, and then the signal wires come out over here. So the transformer, that's what I figure it's picking up. Because and I'm still getting a hum. I don't remember that before. Of course, I have the volume cranked up all the way. I wonder where it's getting that hum. That could be the Dynaco. Previously, when I would turn off the turntable, the hum would go away completely. You could hear that it changed, but it didn't go away completely this time. And I'm just figuring that before I was listening to the Heathkit, which has a bit of a hum, but I think it actually mainly comes from the actual power transformer and not through the speakers. This is coming through the speakers. So that's probably power supply hum. But then when I turn on the turntable, it's different. Anyway. There we go. Well, I hope you found this video informative, useful maybe. I've got nothing bad to say about this. There's nothing bad to say about this platter mat. It's just my system isn't quite resolving enough to justify the cost, at least before I fix the hum issue. Maybe after I fix the hum issue, I'll ask Chris if I can borrow this again and give it another whirl, as it were. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, share the video, do all those algorithm tickling things to help me grow my channel, please. But most of all, enjoy the video. I hope you did enjoy the video, and I hope you'll watch again. And if you do, I will talk to you soon. Cheers.
Go to the center of the earth again.